Okay. Thanks, sir.
There we go.
Cool. Thanks. Hi, guys. I'm Erik Johnson. I decided to do this at last minute, so it looks really good. I'm with Arkin Games. We are a U.S. Virtual-based developer. I'm going to talk about marketing your game, marketing your indie game. I think it's really important to give you guys a bit of a background about myself and Arkin as a company, because every company and every game is different, and so the marketing plan is going to be unique to that. So I'm basically going to give you experiences from my perspective, but I'm going to try to get through it fast so we have some Q&A, because like I said, I think you guys are going to have different questions for your situation, your game. So I want to get through that and just give you some advice that we've seen through experience. So Arkin we're 7 strong right now. We are basically jack of all trades, but I'm the head marketing guy. I also do story design, level design. I'm based in Los Angeles. My boss, Chris Park, is who designed AI War. He's been in the industry forever and has a lot of good game development stuff. He is in North Carolina, as is our composer, our community manager, and we have a programmer in Georgia and a level designer in Georgia as well, and an art lead in Minnesota. So we are completely virtual based. I actually just met Chris for the first time in PAX East 2012, and we've been working together since the beginning of 2011. So if anybody has any questions about virtual stuff, definitely hold those, because that's really what we're into. So, and you can always reach out to me at my Twitter and at Game Connoisseur. My background, by the way, is I was originally working for a marketing company called DEI Worldwide in 2008, where I wrote for things like the Philly Cream Cheese blog, which was, really awesome. Imagine coming up for content for that. I learned a few things there, but it was really slimy. I didn't like it at all. I left to become an indie game journalist, a games journalist, and I actually fell into indie games, fell in love with indie games, and eventually realized that there's no money in journalism, and made my way to the development side and joined with Arkin Games in the beginning of 2011. So first, some marketing sins. I think this is important to mention. For Arkin, these are marketing sins, I'll get into these more later, but just to give you some ideas of what we work with and what works against us when marketing our games. With AI War, we have a steep difficulty curve, which just takes a long time to get into the game. I think it's a 3-hour tutorial. So that is definitely difficult to market in a lot of ways. It's nearly impossible to demo on a show floor. That's AI War and A Valley Without Wind 1. Making major changes after already reaching out to press and players. We did that with A Valley Without Wind 1, and that was a big mistake. And our games don't have a definitive genre. It's like 4X, turn-based, God game. We have to find ways to bring it all together and make it sound like it's a one comparable piece, but a lot of times it's just like lots of things pulled together. So these are just a few things I and the rest of the team address or ignore at our own risk when hammering out what we hope will be an effective marketing plan for a game. We'll come back to these more in detail in a bit. So forming a marketing plan, start early. Preparing a long-term marketing plan for your game is essential, and the earlier you get started, the better. This needs to be something you begin working on at or around the same time you start working on the game's development. That doesn't mean you have to go out right then and start shouting about your game to press and players. We did this with A Valley Without Wind. It was a devastatingly poor decision. It failed on a lot of fronts. We got a lot of people going, "This looks terrible." And we were like, "Yeah, it's only 3 weeks into development." I wish I would have been here for that producer talk, because that would have the 50% talk, because that would have been a great lesson for us for that game. You should be thinking about hooks at the time. Like getting into your marketing copy, as in what about your game is going to entice players to look further into it. Elevator pitches, other items that will eventually form the game's marketing copy. Think about what to show and when to show it. If you're not ready to market your game, then start thinking about what might be marketable about what you're working on. Not just within the game itself, but also the stories surrounding the game. Why did you make it? Were there any major sacrifices? That's really interesting to press, and we'll get into that in a little bit as well. Stay active, but also know when to shut up. You also need to be thinking about certain points in development, especially during the latter stages, when you can actually reach out to press, but understand when they've had their fill of you. There is such a thing as press fatigue. That more applies to Arkin. We have 5 titles out right now, all on Steam, and then we have 2 upcoming titles. So with Steam sales and all that, we're really busy trying to promote our games all the time. We have a sale probably once every 2 months for one game or another. So it's really important. I'm gonna grab water real quick. So it's really important to not fatigue our close press contacts with too much information, or try to talk to them every week or every 2 weeks or even every month necessarily, and give some time for them to kind of, get that salivation going for Arkan Games again. We don't want to constantly just bombard them. You have to have kind of a a knack for that. Get a drink here. Sorry, guys. So stay consistent. Think about some of the readily available avenues you can market your game on. Twitter accounts, Facebook pages, posting on IndieDB, forming a subreddit on Reddit. These are all really good tools to assist you in reaching out to players, and to a certain extent, really active press who are looking for, you're posting on those kind of things, but they won't do you any good if you just set them up and then largely neglect them, like I've seen from certain developers. Some are really good at this and they keep up, and others, they'll set it up and everything and they'll just leave it. And it doesn't benefit you to do that. You have to stay consistent, you have to build and add content to it and keep updating it, and that's how you can grow your follower feed on all those. Be flexible. Plan for branching scenarios. What do you do if your marketing pushes aren't reaching press like you'd hoped? What's the next step if your game doesn't sell well at launch? It's not the end of the world if your game doesn't sell well at launch anymore. At least not on PC, Mac, or at least if you have a game on Steam. We've had several conversations with Steam developers who say, I've had terrible launch numbers, but it was the first time I put it on 50%. It made it back right there. All the sales that we were hoping to get at that point, and that was maybe 3, 4, 6 months from launch. So you have to think about that. What about if it sells way beyond your wildest expectations? That's a happy problem, but that is a problem. I mean, if you didn't expect it to sell as much as it did, there's going to be some issues there that you have to address. I don't know what they are yet, but I'm hoping to learn sometime. And what if a previously unforeseen opportunity comes about? You don't want a rigid marketing plan where you're like, no, we're not going to accept your help, or we're not interested in being part of the Humble Bundle. We have a marketing plan. No, we are. We're definitely interested in that if they came out and asked about that. So you have to be flexible. You have to improv a little bit and just work with sort of an ever-evolving plan for your game. So back on marketing copy, your marketing copy should include a description and a key features list in some form. Brevity is something you really want to focus on here, but you still need to make sure you get across the game, what the game is, and why people should be interested in it. Our team has had an ongoing internal discussion on this topic for our upcoming titles, and we used what came out of that recently with a tease for the game we're currently developing, Skyward Collapse. The extent of the finalized marketing copy in the tease was defining it as a turn-based 4X God game that has you attempting to balance a conflict between two warring factions instead of just trying to obliterate one with the other. Along with some general gameplay explanation and a screenshot that made up the tease. And the results were great. We actually didn't reach out to press at all. We just posted it on our Twitter account and Facebook account. And we've probably gotten about 20 or 25 press articles in the last week from sites like Rock Paper Shotgun and so forth. So right off the bat, if you've got something in mind there, you need to be working on that copy right from the beginning, from the get-go, because you already know what that is in some ways, because you're already in the design process. You've developed those hooks in some ways. Once you have your copy drafted up, get feedback on it if possible. And once it's finalized, understand what parts to use where. For instance, you don't just roll out 2 paragraphs and 7 bullet points in a trailer. You probably would on your website and store page and social network pages, but trailers, you're going to want to take the best out of that and make sure that it's, put into it the trailer in a meaningful way and interacts with it well. Yes, and yes, when contacting press, when you're at last ready to reach out to press, you shouldn't just copy paste what you have into an email, but instead look to work some of the most compelling parts into a more personal delivery. Meaningful news sites and individual journalists out there are confronted with hundreds of PR and developer emails each day. So being impersonal and generic is a really great way to be ignored. You have to reach them in some way. And we'll get into how you can do that within your game and also outside of your game as part of the development process as well. So making a marketing push. This isn't my water. There we go. Gross. It's like one day Conrad if I got that, you know what I mean? All right. So look before you leap. that's sort of self-explanatory, but like let's go into it a little bit more. Define what you want to get out of each particular marketing push, and this could pertain to launch as well. Launch is a clear point where you would make a marketing push, but this is basically anytime you're coming out with something and you want to try to get the attention of players and press. Are you announcing the game, launching it nearing launch, unveiling a major new feature, trying to get the word out on a big sales promotion? All of these have to be approached and handled in their own unique way or in their own individual way. Also, you have to consider what else is going on in the industry during the time you scheduled to make that push. What other games are launching around that time? This includes AAA games, especially AAA titles like GTA 5, for instance, is launching on September 17th, we know now. Smart move would be to avoid the 2 weeks before and the 2 weeks after, because press are basically obligated to cover that game because, was it Take-Two? Take-Two is going to drop $100 million in the marketing for that game, and they are just going to be pulled away from it. So if you're trying to get some attention during September, good luck. I don't think it's going to be very difficult to do. That's one thing that, a personal story, we released a Valley Without Wind 1 3 weeks before the launch of Diablo 3. You know where I'm going. It went really well. The first 3 weeks were fantastic. It was actually better launch numbers than we had for AI War or Titleist, which were our two previous titles at that time. But once Diablo 3 hit, the Steam sales graph went poof, and it never came back. And you guys know how the Diablo 3 launch went. It wasn't really all that great. However, it was this once-in-a-decade kind of event that people were waiting for. Maybe it's not once in a decade, but it was, Diablo 2 had been 10 years off. And I don't think BioShock Infinite, I don't think, maybe even not GTA 5 would have the same impact as Diablo 3 had on our sales graph at that time. And it never recovered. We had, from just the baseline full price sales, we got plenty of money back on our sales, Steam sale promotions. But that was something we were like, wow, we did not see that coming, and it just flatlined the sales after that point. Let's see here. Be creative. With being creative, what I really mean is thinking about how to capitalize what makes your game stand out from others. Off the top of my head, I remember the Jack Lumber guys. If you guys have heard of Jack Lumber, it's an iOS game where you just kind of cut these logs come by and you cut them and you're just a big lumberjack guy. The Jack Lumber developers always showed up to the events they attended in big red plaid shirts and suspenders and hats. Was it effective? It's the only thing I can think of when I think of this creative portion. So it obviously stayed in my mind. But that's just one idea, being creative and being a little different and kind of getting some press going in that way. They were willing to go, we're going to sell out, and we're not sell out, but we're going to give it this our all for our game, and we're going to dress up and really go all in on it. And I think it's worked out for them. Don't be afraid to fail. It's been said before in some of the other talks. It's meaningful to have tried something to get a result, to experiment, regardless of the results. That doesn't just benefit you if you're open and you share with everybody like we're all doing today. That benefits the indie game industry, which is something that we want it to thrive as long as possible. If something's not working, you can learn from your mistakes. If something does work, you note it as well. Either way, you have data to work with. You have raw data. That's key when you're developing or you're going through a marketing plan. What works? What doesn't? Don't do that again if it doesn't work. But what way could you come about that will work? These marketing pushes, especially prior to a game's launch, are great for figuring out what you need to focus on and what you should avoid when it comes to marketing your game. Lastly, be reasonable. Not everyone is going to be as excited as you are about your game, especially the first time around. If it's your first time reaching out to press, don't be surprised if the vast majority give you the cold shoulder. That's a typical thing that I've experienced. This is where the long-term consistency comes in. What didn't entice press 6 weeks ago might entice them now for whatever reason. Maybe they saw another website cover your game in the last 6 weeks. Maybe what you're pitching to them just stuck better this time. But you can't just email once to Kotaku, they don't cover you, and go, oh, that didn't work out, so all right. No, continue to a certain extent. You're not going to email them every single day. Why haven't you posted about my game? No, that's not the point. Like you sit there, you see if they're going to take the bait. A lot of times they don't even. Some of the big guys don't even respond to you. It's just like, whoa, an article out of nowhere, great. But if that doesn't come about and it's been about 2 weeks, you shoot another email. that doesn't come about, you wait another month, shoot another email, 3 months, so on and so forth. If that writer's not working out for you, find another writer for Kotaku. I mean, this is a process. It's not something you just try once, go fail, and kick a can up the road. You have to keep at it to get the coverage that you're hoping to get for your game. Okay, other things to keep in mind that I couldn't fit anywhere else on my slides. Players care about gameplay. Journalists want to collaborate on an interesting story about the game and its creators. I don't mean the in-game story, but the story around the development of the game. They ask for this when submitting for. Who's heard of IndieCade? Or who hasn't heard of IndieCade? Please raise your hand. Some people, maybe, I don't know. It's a really nice event in Culver City. It's an indie game festival in Culver City. It takes place every October. Submissions are open for it right now. I believe it's $60 right now to submit for it. I plugged IndieCade. But the point is that they don't just want to see really experimental or cool games. They also want to have really interesting developers behind it. They want interesting stories to go with it. That's why they ask that question on the submission form. And journalists, that's what brings in journalists. Journalists, most of the big guys have covered games and covered your type of genre a million times over. That's not really what grabs them right away. They want to know that maybe the toil that you've gone through, or that it was a really difficult process, or maybe the game was this close to not even being made. That's the unique angle they're looking for when they're willing to write something for you. You are one of your biggest assets, which I've kind of touched on, but just to go over that again. Ultimately, one of the ways you can stand out from the ever-growing crowd is yourself. So put yourself out there, keep a developer blog, attend public events, form contacts, take advantage of opportunities for promotion when they come along. Many reviewers spend under 2 hours actually playing. Now, this doesn't apply to a lot of people because a lot of people have really cool games like, what was the tower game we just saw? Towerfall. Hey, man. If you play for 2 hours, you get your fill. You know what I mean? AI War's got a 3-hour tutorial. So if you play AI War for 2 hours, you're going to be like, this game sucks. I didn't learn anything. I learned a lot about it, but I didn't get a whole lot from the actual gameplay portion. And that's that. Why I think it's important to tell you guys this is, especially with the long form games or the longer to get into games like Arkan does have, we've seen the review scores go from 7, 8, 9, 10. If you can tell when you read the reviews, okay, this person played 3+ hours. Any reviews that you can tell this person just scratched the surface, 4, 5, 6, almost down the line. I guess my point here is you shouldn't sacrifice your game in any way that for marketing. It's a given that you should be getting a good package together before you even try to market. But if you don't front load some of that really intriguing, cool content, reviewers are going to miss it, and you're going to get a lower score than you want. And with review scores, as everybody's pointed out, how annoying Metacritic is, it's annoying because it's incredibly important at this point, and a lot of us don't believe it should be, but that's the way it is. That's what players use. So if you get a low Metacritic score, your sales are not going to be there almost automatically, because that's one of the few things that players use to decide and determine whether or not they're going to purchase your game. No rush jobs. Remember, a good marketing plan starts at or near the beginning of development, not the end. Remember the rule of thirds for a successful launch. 1/3 is having a good game, 1/3 is forming and following through on a marketing plan, and the last third is pure luck. So there is some luck to it aspects, but if you put in the first 2/3, you have a good chance to succeed. Don't lose faith. It's a mistake to think that you've ever reached a saturation point with your game. Minecraft has not reached a saturation point yet. Notch is like one of the Times Man of the Year guys. That game has not come close to selling what it's going to sell once they get it onto PSN and all these other things. And they haven't gotten it to the international levels they want to yet. Daniel Kaplan, their main business head, is being extraordinarily savvy with having them kind of take the one step at a time. But and it's an outlier. Obviously, Minecraft is a big outlier in the indie games industry. But what I'm saying is that there are people out there that want to play your game and they don't know about it. If you get posted on Total Biscuit on YouTube, or if you get posted on Kotaku, you're like, wow, that must reach so many people, and it does. But in a way, those people are all on this individual island. There's other islands out there to go out and find. Some players, plenty of people don't follow Kotaku. Plenty of people don't follow IGN. It's nice to get big posts on that site, but that's just one of many things. You shouldn't ever shun a small press contact, or smaller than maybe a Kotaku, just because they don't bring in the same sales numbers or even traffic numbers that they do. You just never know when someone's going to come across their site, that article, even years down the road, and say, "Wow, that's a really intriguing game. I went and bought that." Same thing with showing your games at like conferences and stuff. I've had people come up, recently and say, "Oh man, I saw your game at PAX East in 2012. I mean, that was over a year ago, and I just recently purchased it and stuff." It's like we couldn't possibly track that, but you can tell it's really something that you can't necessarily put analytics on it, but it's a huge payoff to be out there as much as you can. So conclusions. Let's go back to my marketing sins. So the steep difficulty curve, how do you work with it? Well, word of mouth from our hardcore players helps combat that in a huge way. Hey, get past this learning curve, and this game is freaking awesome. And we have a lot of, we have a really tight community. Arkin prides itself in customer service. If someone has a complaint, if someone has a bug, we try to address it or fix it as quickly as possible. That just gets players on your side. They want to see you succeed if you're listening to them and you're working with their feedback. So word of mouth is incredibly important, especially from players. Nearly impossible to demo on a show floor. So at PAX East 2012, just to give you a breakdown, there's roughly, this is just rough numbers, 75,000 attendees. We had 24 hours of show floor time across 3 days. We had 4 computer stations. So at 15 to 20 minutes total for each person, that works out to under 500 players out of the 75,000 attendees, if we ran at perfect efficiency. So that's a minuscule percentage of the attendees that are actually going to be sitting down and playing your game. Pretty depressing at first. However, there's other ways that can grab attendees' attention. The booth setup, your banners. We had a raised monitor running gameplay footage of A Valley Without Wind 1 while we were there. Swag with relevant info, buttons, stickers, cards, pamphlets, at least with a website down there, perhaps more. And the idea that interest begets more interest. If our demo stations were consistently occupied, that would often draw more of a crowd. Suddenly we would have this long line forming. That resulted in more people watching longer portions of the gameplay trailers and grabbing swag and chatting with our team, and just investing a lot more than the standard passerbys do when they just sort of walk by, go, and just move on. They're not getting anything out of that, but if they stick around for a few minutes, even if they don't play, that makes an impression on them. Making major changes after already reaching out to press and players. As I said with Valley Without One, we really subscribed to being open as a developer, but with Valley One, it was kind of to a fault. I'm sure this is obvious to most, but you really don't want to make any major sweeping design changes after you've revealed your game in any form or fashion. Don't do it. Ever. I'm serious, it's a really bad backlash. So that's a mistake we've learned from. We're still incredibly open, but we now have a better understanding of what to show and when. And then lastly, no definitive genre. It's just pretty much all of our games. That's just another way of saying experimental. Our mantra at Arkin is we want to make the games that we wished existed when we were growing up and running home to our SNESes and Sega Genesis. And the technology just wasn't there to allow for where PC and Mac allows us to kind of develop these more, like A Valley Without Wind was, our goal with A Valley Without Wind was like an open world Metroidvania, which is very difficult to do. But we could at least try to do it with a PC, and we never had that opportunity. No one had that opportunity 20 years ago. So my point is marketing sins can be marketing benefits if you know how to utilize them. Most, if not every developer will have some kind of marketing sin. It's what makes your game unique. It's not a bad thing. It's just something that you have to consider when you're trying to get the game out there. We're still, that definitely, but you have to figure out how to work with and or around these if you're aiming to get your title in front of as many eyes as possible. And that's all I've got. So thank you guys very much. I'd love to take some Q&A if you guys have any questions about, or any specific questions about the game, your guys' games, or marketing plans that you guys are trying to get into motion.